Hello everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. We're back with another Frequently Asked Questions Friday. Fact Friday. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. There's a little bell there. If you hit the bell, it will notify you when we do a new video, which we're currently doing 5 a week. Yes, we're cranking out 5 a week and working like crazy. We're currently mixing a Rick Springfield live album, which has full orchestra on it and is absolutely fantastic, and they filmed as well. And next week we start a new record with Alexandra Brown, so that's a lot of fun. And in between that, we're flying around to AES and all kinds of other wonderful places and filming videos for you lovely people. Okay, so there's lots of really great questions, and this one I think is rather fantastic. How do you make decisions on gear when so many people can have a negative opinion about certain pieces of equipment? At the same time, it may be a building block for an iconic album. How would you approach it? There are, well look, see what this is? This is an AKG D19C. So it's very famous, the D19, for being a microphone that a little band called the Beatles used. So it's a very beautiful microphone. Looks great. Well known. I mean, so many of you know it, obviously from the Beatles. Our good friend JJ has a whole bunch of these. And these little babies were, I would consider to be relatively inexpensive dynamic microphones during the 60s. Probably some would argue an equivalent of something like an SM57, which is also an absolutely wonderful mic. So the story goes, per Jeff Emmerich, that this microphone would be plugged in. It got used on guitars. It got used sometimes to do a background vocal. It got used as overheads. Yes, a dynamic microphone is an overhead on a drum kit. The reality is when asked, Jeff, why did you use the D19? He responded, because it was plugged in, ready to go. When you're working with artists and they're super creative and they've got ideas and they want to just keep putting them down, they want to try something. I've been in this situation many, many times before myself. And a mic is plugged in and it's got a nice signal chain going on, maybe a nice mic preamp compressor or whatever, and you just turn it around, lock it up, they sing a vocal, they want to try an acoustic, you want to do it, put it down, put it on the acoustic. And that's called keeping the creativity and the momentum going. So, why am I pointing that out? Well, there's nothing particularly sexy, shall we say, about the AKG D19, except that it was used by that little band, once again, the Beatles. And because of that, it's given it this amazing mystique. Now, it does sound good. I do like the sound of it. It is fantastic in certain situations, and many, many people love it. But let's think about it for a second. If it wasn't a microphone that you knew was on Revolver and a whole bunch of other great albums, would you hold it in such high esteem? I don't think so. There are many, many great dynamic microphones that can do that job that that microphone did. And that's the reality. So that really kind of proves what your question is implying, is that the equipment that gets used on something successful suddenly becomes incredibly valuable. I think a big thing that you've heard me talk about 100 different times before, so I apologize for those of you that follow us, is sort of guitars like the Stellar and the Silvertone over there, the ones that Scott Baxendale takes and rebuilds and makes into beautiful guitars. Well, before even they get rebuilt, those guitars are very, very interesting because they're 40s, 50s and 60s inexpensive guitars that were built for people to learn to play on. They have issues. Until Scott gets hold of them, they're kind of dead sounding, you know, but they sound really, really unique. And you've heard me talk about this as well. My crappy piano is my crappy piano. You may own your own crappy piano. So why am I talking about these things? Well, these things have so much personality. They're instruments, they're microphones, you know, things that are not established high-end SSLs, U47s, U87s, you know. We all know those catchphrases. We all know they're beautiful and expensive and do great work. Of course. But these left of center things give you personality. And as you're implying, maybe a $45 pawn shop acoustic guitar is going to give you more personality than, say, the most expensive handmade guitar ever, which has the perfectly evenly balanced sound. There's something about, once again, my crappy piano, which has so much more personality. What am I comparing against? Well, I'm comparing it against a world where we live now, where there's these beautifully sampled virtual instruments. So if you open up your DAW and bring up like this incredible Bosendorfer recorded in like Vienna, you know, in some beautiful concert hall, and it's the best sounding piano you've ever heard in your life. Well, when I was a kid, the only way to do that was to get on a plane and fly to Vienna and sit with a Bosendorfer and put some microphones on it and get a world-class piano player to play on it, and then you could have that sound. So basically, yes, it cost tens of thousands of pounds, tens of thousands of dollars, euros, you name it, to do that. Nowadays, for a fraction of a cost, you can have that sound always by just buying the download, you know, and have it as playback as a sample. So the idiosyncratic, the wrong things, the messed up things, the crappy guitars or the rebuilt guitars or the bad pianos, all these things that traditionally we used to avoid now are starting to look like absolutely incredible things. And so I encourage you to think outside the box, to get really creative. Think about microphones, you know, using dynamic microphones, you would expect it to be a condenser. Use a ribbon where you might want to use a condenser. You know, start thinking a little bit outside the box. Start thinking about instruments that you don't hear every single second on a record. You know, it could be, try using an accordion. Try using like a little cheap squeeze box instead of a keyboard sound. Maybe you can record that and then modify it inside your DAW, add some additional weird effects to it. You know, nobody else is going to have that, and that unevenness of sound and that randomness and maybe broken reeds on things and keys that don't work properly. All of these things will add to something that's very idiosyncratic, something that's uniquely yours, and most of the time isn't going to cost that much money. Get a little kid xylophone, you know, sample in the sounds, play along, something that gives you individuality that nobody else has got. So I love that question because it opens up that whole discussion about the things have to be expensive. No, they don't. They don't need to be expensive to create incredible music. When you're first starting out, how did you know when you were ready to work professionally as an engineer? I want to get started freelancing, but I'm not sure if I'm not ready or it's just my own head. I really strongly believe this, that there's no time like the present. If you have been using a DAW for a few months and you've got used to it and you've got an ear and you feel creative and you're excited and passionate about making music, then make music. Just do it. We all know, we talked about Jeff Emerick in an earlier question. Jeff Emerick was 19 turning 20 during Revolver. You've heard me say that many, many times. Why do I bring that up? I bring that up because he maybe had a year or two, a couple of years of experience working at Abbey Road. But then he's thrown in on the deep end and became a full-time engineer. And his baptism of fire was Revolver, which is considered to be number 1 or number 2 greatest album ever made by every other greatest album ever made chart that ever comes out. So obviously it had incredibly talented people and musicians like the Beatles and George Martin involved. But there was a 19, 20-year-old who was capturing great performances and was creative and tried out amazing new ideas for things that we now take for granted. So if you think about it in those terms, and then you think about all of the musicians that we admire, that were teenagers or early or mid-20s when they were making their first records, it's that sense of creativity that comes from not necessarily youth, but inexperience is okay. It's not an age thing, because there's people that come back and play music at 60 and write great stuff. It's not an age thing specifically, but it is a creative, passionate thing. If you absolutely love what you're doing and you bring your A game to it, like really involved, you can do amazing things. Okay, so that's one part of the question. The other part, which I think is really, really important, is like, this is a service industry. As a producer, engineer, and as a mixer, you're providing a service. So if you feel confident and comfortable doing that at any time, then you should. So if you feel confident and comfortable doing that, then do it. There's always going to be somebody you can help. And if you understand your level of ability, it doesn't matter if you've been doing this for a few months or a few decades. The reality is that if you know how to record something, basically, you know how to program some MIDI stuff and build tracks, and you've got a young artist that wants to come in and work with you on it, and they've got a tiny budget, then, with a small budget, you work lots and lots of long hours, and you learn together. Dave Sardi used to say to me, he goes, learn as you earn. I mean, the reality is like, what he means by that is you're always learning. I really love when Brent Fisher, when we shot that video with him with a full orchestration and the jazz and the jazz band and everything and the strings. It was a wonderful day. And I asked him in the interview afterwards, I was like, how did your day go? And he goes, oh, it was fantastic. I learned so much. I mean, how wonderful is that? So I believe, as Sardi was saying, it's like always be learning. When you're doing something, whether you're getting paid badly, massively, free, whatever it is you're doing, you're always learning and always be learning. So don't hold yourself back. Realize just because you look at, Fred Famous, the Sound of Hits, talking about themselves and all this kind of stuff, and like, yeah, I'm so successful. Well, you know what? They all started somewhere. And I believe that it is a really, really wonderful opportunity for you, all of you, to just get out there making music. And remember, age, whether you're super young, whether you're old, whether you're in the middle, whatever it is irrelevant. Experience is something that is amazing. Acquired knowledge is an amazing thing to bring to a situation. However, what's more important? Like a want and a need and a desire and a work ethic and a passion and a love. All of those things, attitude, positive attitude, is more important than all of those things. I've been in rooms with really, really talented people who are horrible to work with, absolutely horrific, who are telling everybody they're doing it wrong and getting no level of creativity. And then I've been in rooms with people that are relatively inexperienced that get performances from people and allow them to feel important and bring ideas to the table and add positive things to the music. So, and to be honest, I've been in a room with more negative experts than I've been in a room with than anything else. I mean, look, when you go and you read comments on channels sometimes and you see these people telling each other off and can you imagine what that would be like to work with somebody like that? Be in a room with somebody who's like, you're doing it wrong. Can you imagine being a kid, like trying to play a part, trying to come up with something creative, and there's a guy going, oh no, you're using the wrong pedal and you didn't say that right when you explained it, and you cable this and blah, and the strings and the guitar and the way you're holding it. I mean, geez, yeah. So sometimes it's kind of a blessing to be learning, to be open to learning, and not to be an expert. So cut yourself some slack. If you're new to this and you're just learning, but you want to get yourself out there, remember, all the greats, all the best people in the world are always learning. What do you use for controlling your multi-monitor setup? Is it a passive or active monitor controller? I just got a second pair of monitors and it's quite bothersome to switch between the two, so looking for a better way. I know on that new Audient, the Nero, they have a switching system on there, which is pretty fantastic, where you can set different levels. So if one set of monitors is too loud than the others, you can actually adjust it so they all come back to the same level. That's really, really good. That's not something I have, so that's the Nero. Now this back here is the switch, which it's by Proco. I've had it for years now. And all my monitors that you see up here, and they do rotate, as you know. I've got the Focal Trio 11s. I've got the 1032Cs at the moment from Genelec, and there, of course, is the Kali LP6s. We also have the Kali IN8s. We've just been moving some things around. I have another room where we have, of course, Eve audio monitors, which are fantastic. We also have a big pair of PMCs in there, so we're pretty spoiled. And we have NS10s, and little baby IK multimedias, and 1031s, Genelec. So we have all these different things. And they're either a switching system on the console, but in this instance, there's no switching system on the console. There's only a mini and an alt. So for multiple sets of speakers, we use the switch. Now, as far as like what kind of system to use, I would use that, or I would use your interface. And if you do happen to have the Audient Nero, that's pretty special, because each one of those ones you can balance perfectly. And I do like that idea. I'm just used to it, so I'll click it down or click it up one or two, you know, because those focals are freaking powerful. We forget sometimes we're monitoring, blasting the Genelecs and going, yeah, we love this. And we'll go to the focals, and Eric and I will be pinned to the back wall like this, because they are so powerful. That's what I'd recommend. I'd recommend getting a monitor controller that does the job that you need. I know the Nero sounds fantastic. I got to use it, really like it. Otherwise, if you want a system like this, the Proco Switch. I think the best thing to do here is for other people to give suggestions of how they are doing it. So please leave, your suggestions down below. How do you switch between monitors? Is it built into your interface, or do you have a separate monitor switching control? Well, thanks everybody for such a marvelous Fact Friday. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to see your comments and questions. Please leave a bunch of questions below. Please go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list if you haven't already, and you'll get a whole bunch of free goodies. And have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and we'll see you again next week.